Hello, I'm Lucy. I want to share something very personal with you. My English speaking journey. I didn't have friends who spoke English. I didn't go to any English school. I was alone at home most of the time. Still, I wanted to speak English. I knew it would open doors for me. I was suffering through a lot of difficulties during my English improvement journey. I was in search of those ways which might lead me to English world. It was hard at the beginning, but I never gave up. Feeling disappointed and frustrated, and after long days' journey crossed, I finally found smart ways to practice English at home, alone. And today, I want to share all those methods and my story of improving English with you. I hope it helps you too. When I first decided to learn English on my own, I had many doubts and fears. I lived in a small town where nobody spoke English, and there were no teachers or classes nearby. I was shy and unsure of my abilities, but deep inside, I had a strong wish to speak English well. I knew it would open many doors for me. Better, jobs, new friends, and a chance to explore the world beyond my little town, so I had to find a way to practice English, even if I was all alone. The first step I took was the simplest but also the hardest. I talked to myself in English. Every morning, as the sun began to shine through my window, I stood in front of the mirror and greeted myself with a bright smile. "Good morning, Lucy. How are you today?" I said aloud, even though I was the only one there to hear. At first, it felt awkward and silly. Speaking to myself in English felt like pretending, like I was acting in a play without a script. But I forced myself to keep going because I knew this was my way to start thinking and speaking in English. I started by asking simple questions to myself, just like a real conversation. "What will you do today, Lucy?" I asked, and I answered, out loud. "Today, I will read a book, cook lunch, and practice English." I also talked about things I saw around me, like the weather. "It is sunny and warm outside today. The birds are singing." At times, I described my breakfast. "I am eating bread and butter with tea." I tried to use everyday words and sentences that I could remember easily. Sometimes I made mistakes in grammar or pronunciation, but I didn't care. The important thing was that I was speaking. This daily habit quickly became the most important part of my day. I looked forward to my quiet morning talks because they gave me a sense of confidence. Before, I felt scared to speak English in front of others, but talking to myself was safe and free. I could make mistakes without anyone judging me. This freedom allowed me to relax and enjoy the process of learning. Talking to myself also helped me start thinking in English. At first, my mind would think in my native language, and then I had to translate everything into English before speaking. This slow process made me feel tired and frustrated. But with each passing day, my brain started to make English the first language for my thoughts. I would think directly in English when I looked in the mirror or when I was walking around my house. It was a magical feeling to realize that English was becoming a natural part of my daily life. One day, while brushing my teeth, I caught myself saying, "I am brushing my teeth," without even thinking about it. This small moment made me smile. It was proof that my efforts were working. I was creating a new habit, and English was becoming more familiar and less scary. I began to feel more comfortable with the language, even though I still had a long way to go. As I talked to myself, I discovered that using simple sentences was the best way to build my confidence. Instead of trying to speak perfectly, I focused on expressing my ideas clearly. For example, instead of saying, "I am going to prepare my breakfast now," I would say, "I eat breakfast now." Keeping things simple helped me avoid confusion and made speaking easier. I realized that learning English was not about being perfect. It was about communicating. Sometimes I imagined that I was talking to a friend or a teacher. I would ask myself questions like, "How was your day, Lucy?" and then answer honestly. This made my practice feel more real. I also tried to use new words that I had learned from books or videos. For instance, when I saw a flower in my garden, I said, This is a beautiful flower. If I learned a new verb like run or jump, I made sentences like, I run in the morning, or I jump high. These small steps helped me expand my vocabulary little by little. There were times when I felt lonely during these practice sessions. Speaking aloud to myself could sometimes feel strange, especially when family members were around. But I explained to them that I was learning and needed quiet time. They supported me and gave me space. That encouragement made a big difference. Knowing that I had their support motivated me to keep practicing every day. As the weeks passed, I noticed that my pronunciation was improving. At first, some words were hard to say, and I would mumble or say them incorrectly. But by repeating the words aloud regularly, my mouth and tongue learned how to form the sounds properly. I even tried to copy the way English speakers talked in videos, trying to match their rhythm and tone. This made my speaking sound more natural. Talking to myself in English also helped me improve my listening skills. When I practiced out loud, I had to listen carefully to the words I was saying. This made me more aware of English sounds and helped me recognize them better when I heard others speak. Even though I was alone, I felt connected to the language in a deeper way. One challenge I faced was finding new topics to talk about. Some days I ran out of ideas and repeated the same sentences. To solve this, I started keeping a small notebook beside my mirror. Whenever I learned a new word or phrase, I wrote it down. Every morning, I would pick a new word from the notebook and try to use it in my mirror conversation. This kept my practice fresh and interesting. Another way I made my practice better was by asking myself why and how questions. For example, instead of saying, I eat lunch, I asked, why do I eat lunch? And answered, I eat lunch because I am hungry. Then, how do I cook lunch? And I answered, I cook lunch with vegetables and rice. These questions made me think more deeply and use more complex sentences. It was a small step towards becoming fluent. Sometimes I recorded my morning talks on my phone. Listening to my voice helped me notice where I needed to improve. I heard myself pause too much or say some words incorrectly. At first, hearing my own voice was uncomfortable, but over time, I got used to it. This feedback loop was very helpful for my progress. One beautiful thing about talking to myself was that I could practice anytime I wanted. Whether I was cooking, cleaning, or relaxing, I could say a sentence in English. I even practiced during short walks in my neighborhood. Saying simple sentences like, I walk to the store, or I see the trees, made me feel like I was carrying a conversation wherever I went. Through this daily habit, I learned a valuable lesson. Practice doesn't need a classroom or a teacher. Sometimes, the best teacher is your own voice. Talking to myself every morning was like planting seeds. At first, the seeds were small and fragile, but with care and patience, they grew into strong plants. My English was growing every day. This journey taught me patience too. Some days, I felt tired or bored. I didn't want to speak to myself or practice, but I reminded myself why I started. I thought about my dreams of speaking English fluently and meeting new people. This motivation helped me push through the hard days. My family noticed my progress too. One day, my mother said, Lucy, you sound more confident when you speak English now. That small compliment made me happy and proud. It showed me that my private practice was paying off. I felt ready to try speaking with others. By the time I was comfortable talking to myself in English, I was ready to take the next step. I wanted to make a daily routine for my practice to make it more organized. I knew that practicing every day was important, but I needed a plan to keep improving. So I wrote down a simple schedule with English activities for each day. I called it my English practice routine. This routine gave me clear goals and helped me stay focused. From talking to myself, I moved on to reading aloud, listening to videos, and repeating sentences. Each step was connected, like building blocks of a strong house. This is how I moved from simply talking to myself to creating a daily routine that made my English stronger. After many mornings spent talking to myself in English, I realized that my practice was a bit random. Some days I spoke a lot, and other days I forgot or was too busy. I wanted something more steady, something clear that would help me improve faster. So I decided to create a daily routine, a simple plan I could follow every day, written completely in English. I knew that having a routine would give me structure, help me stay motivated, and make practicing English a natural part of my life. At first, I sat down with a notebook and thought about the different parts of my day. I wrote down things I did regularly and wanted to include in my English learning. For example, I woke up early, ate breakfast, went to work, and had free time in the evening. I wanted to connect my learning with these parts so that English would not feel separate or difficult. Then I started writing a daily schedule, but I wrote every step in English. It looked like this. Wake up at 7 a.m., brush teeth, eat breakfast, read a book for 15 minutes, watch an English video, practice speaking English, and go to bed by 10 p.m. Writing these in English helped me learn new vocabulary for everyday actions and times. Each morning, before starting my day, I read the routine out loud. Saying these words repeatedly helped my mouth get used to English sounds. At first, my pronunciation was not perfect. I sometimes stumbled on long words or mixed up the order of words. But I kept reading aloud every day because I knew that with repetition, my mouth and brain would learn to work together better. It was like training a muscle. The more I practiced, the stronger and more natural it became. Reading the routine was also a peaceful way to start my day. It helped me focus on my goals and feel ready to speak English throughout the day. The daily routine also gave me a clear plan and purpose. When I saw practice speaking English at night written in my routine, I knew I had to spend time talking, just like I did in the mornings. Having this reminder pushed me to be consistent. Without a plan, it's easy to forget or lose motivation, but with my routine in place, I felt more responsible for my learning. It was exciting to check off each task as I finished it. This small feeling of success motivated me to keep going every day. Making a routine in English forced me to think about my day in English. When I wrote Eat Breakfast at 8 a.m., I learned how to say time correctly and talk about daily habits. When I wrote Read for 15 minutes, I practiced words about reading and books. This helped me build my vocabulary bit by bit, without even realizing it. It was like learning by living. Because my routine included different activities, I practiced different parts of English, speaking, reading, and listening, all in one plan. I also noticed that reading the routine out loud helped me practice pronunciation and fluency. Saying the same sentences every day made the words feel familiar. Sometimes I changed small parts to make it more interesting. For example, instead of read a book, I said, read a magazine, or read a story. I even added little details like drink a cup of coffee or write a few sentences in my notebook. These small changes kept my routine fresh and helped me learn new words. Creating a daily routine was not only about practicing English, but also about managing my time better. Before, I sometimes wasted time or felt too tired to study. But when I planned my day in English, I realized how much time I actually had to practice. I started waking up earlier just so I could read my routine and talk to myself in English. I found moments during the day to listen to English songs or watch short videos, and I included those in my schedule too. My routine became a guide that balanced learning with rest and fun. One important thing I learned was to keep the routine simple and realistic. At first, I wanted to do too many things at once, like learning 10 new words a day, watching long videos, and writing essays. But this was overwhelming and made me lose motivation quickly. So I made my routine easy to follow, just a few small steps every day. This helped me build confidence and develop good habits that lasted longer. It taught me that steady, small practice is better than trying too hard all at once. My routine also gave me the chance to prepare for real-life situations. For example, I added a part where I practiced conversations I might have with friends, or in shops. I said sentences like, "Can I have a coffee, please?" Or, "What time does the bus arrive?" Saying these out loud made me feel ready for when I needed to speak English outside my home. I realized that a routine can connect learning with real life, making it more useful and less boring. As I followed my routine day after day, I noticed changes. Speaking English became easier and more natural. I didn't have to think hard about every word. My mouth knew what to do because it had practiced so much. I felt proud when I could speak without stopping or getting nervous. This progress encouraged me to keep going. Sometimes I shared my routine with friends who also wanted to learn English. We talked about what worked for us and supported each other. Having a routine became a way to stay connected with others and stay motivated. Eventually, I added more variety to my routine. I included listening to podcasts, writing simple diary entries, and even singing English songs. All of these activities were small, but helped me improve different skills. The routine was like a puzzle with many pieces: reading, writing, listening, and speaking, all coming together to make my English stronger. Having this plan made my learning feel balanced and enjoyable. Even on days when I felt tired or busy, my routine reminded me to practice at least a little. I learned that consistency is the key to success. It doesn't matter if I practice for 5 minutes or 30 minutes, as long as I do something every day. This mindset helped me stay positive and not give up. I knew that every small step was bringing me closer to my goal of speaking English fluently. My daily routine was more than just words on paper. It became a way of life. It helped me build confidence, improve my skills, and develop discipline. It turned English from a difficult challenge into a fun and natural part of my day. Now, I look forward to practicing English and discovering new ways to improve. After establishing this routine, I felt ready to take my practice further. I wanted to find ways to improve not only my speaking, but also my understanding of English grammar and vocabulary. This desire led me to start reading simple English books and stories every day. Reading helped me learn new words and see how sentences are formed. It was the next step in my journey, and I was excited to share how reading became a part of my English learning adventure. When I started pretending I was in real conversations, my English learning became much more exciting and practical. Talking to myself in front of the mirror was helpful, but it still felt like practicing alone, without the real pressure or excitement of talking to another person. So I decided to take a new step. I would imagine real-life situations where people spoke English and I would act as if I were there, talking to someone else. This change made a big difference. I began by thinking about everyday places where people usually speak English, places like shops, parks, parties, or even coffee cafes. I imagined myself in each place, and I pictured someone asking me common questions. For example, when I imagined being in a shop, I thought of a friendly shopkeeper greeting me with, "Hello, how can I help you today?" Then, I practiced answering confidently, "Hi, I am looking for a blue shirt. Do you have any?" At first, my answers were short and simple, but soon I added more details like, "I need a size medium, please," or "What is the price of this shirt?" This simple role-playing helped me feel more ready for real conversations outside. Next, I imagined I was at a park. I pictured a stranger smiling and saying, "Hello, what's your name?" Instead of just saying Lucy, I practiced giving full answers. "My name is Lucy. I live in Chicago." Then, I imagined the stranger asking more questions like, "Do you come to this park often?" And I answered, "Yes, I come here every weekend to walk my dog." Sometimes, I added little details to make it more interesting, like describing my dog or talking about the weather. These imagined conversations made me think about how real people talk in daily life, not just textbook phrases. I also practiced changing my tone and facial expressions as I spoke. When the question was friendly, I smiled and used a warm voice. When the question was curious, I showed surprise or interest in my voice. I realized that conversation is not just about words, but also about feelings and expressions. Changing my tone helped me sound more natural, and it gave me confidence to speak in real life. I even practiced using simple body language like nodding or shaking my head while talking. This made my pretend conversations feel very real and lively. Another place I imagined was a party. I pictured meeting new people and introducing myself. "Hi, I'm Lucy. Nice to meet you," I would say with a smile. Then I practiced small talk questions like, "Where are you from?" or "What do you do for fun?" I answered by talking about my hobbies or my favorite music. Sometimes I pretended to ask questions too, like, "Do you like this party?" or "Have you been here before?" This role-playing helped me prepare for social situations, which can be tricky because conversations move quickly and people expect natural answers. When I first started these role plays, it was hard to think of what to say next. Sometimes I got stuck or forgot how to answer. But instead of feeling frustrated, I stopped and thought about possible responses. I wrote down some example answers in a notebook and practiced them until they felt natural. This preparation made it easier to continue conversations without stopping. I also learned to use simple phrases to buy time when I wasn't sure what to say, like, "That's a good question," or "Let me think for a moment." These little tricks helped me stay calm and confident. Pretending I was in real conversations helped me improve my listening skills too. Even though I was speaking alone, I practiced imagining the other person's questions and comments. I learned to expect follow-up questions or different topics. This mental practice made me more aware of how conversations flow naturally. It also taught me to listen carefully to what people say so I can answer properly. I found that conversations are like dances. Both people take turns speaking, listening, and reacting. These role plays also made me more aware of common English phrases and expressions. For example, I learned to say polite things like, "Excuse me," "Could you help me, please?" or "Thank you very much." I practiced using these phrases in the right situations. I also learned how to say, "Sorry, I don't understand," when I didn't catch something. This phrase was especially helpful because it gave me a polite way to ask people to repeat themselves without feeling embarrassed. Sometimes, I challenged myself by pretending I was in difficult situations. For example, I imagined losing my way and asking, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the train station?" I practiced listening to directions and repeating them back. I also imagined going to a restaurant and ordering food. I practiced saying, "I would like the chicken. Salad, please," and asking questions about the menu. Role-playing these situations gave me practical language skills I could use anywhere. I found it helpful to add variety to my practice. One day, I pretended to be a customer in a store. The next day, I imagined talking to a teacher or a new neighbor. This variety kept me interested and helped me learn different vocabulary and expressions. I also watched videos and listened to English conversations online, then tried to repeat or role-play what I heard. This connected my pretend conversations with real English speaking. Another key benefit of pretending was that I could practice anytime and anywhere. I didn't need a partner or a classroom. If I was waiting for a bus, I imagined conversations I might have. If I was cooking dinner, I practiced talking about recipes. This constant practice helped English become part of my daily life, not just something I studied in books. Most importantly, role-playing real conversations helped me feel ready for the real world. When I finally talked to someone in English outside, I wasn't as nervous. I remembered my practice and felt confident to answer questions, ask my own, and keep the conversation going. My pretend conversations had prepared me to be a real English speaker, able to connect with others. After weeks of practicing these role plays, I noticed big improvements in my speaking skills. I was more fluent, more confident, and more natural. My pronunciation got better, and I could understand others more easily. But I knew there was still more to learn, especially about how to improve every day and make learning English a regular habit. That's when I decided to organize my practice even more carefully. I made a daily routine in English to keep track of my learning. Writing down my schedule helped me stay focused and gave me clear goals each day. This routine became the next important step on my journey to speak English well. Watching videos in English was a turning point in my language learning journey. Before that, I mostly practiced speaking alone or with my daily routines. But when I started watching simple English videos, like cartoons, interviews, and short movies, everything changed. It was a fun way to learn because I could listen to real people speak naturally, and I felt like I was joining their conversation. This helped me understand how English is really spoken, not just the words from textbooks. At first, I chose cartoons because they had clear and slow speech, simple vocabulary, and lots of emotion. Cartoons were easy to follow, and I enjoyed the stories. I found it interesting to hear how characters expressed feelings like happiness, sadness, or surprise through their voices. I realized that speaking English is not just about the words, but also about how you say them. Tone, speed, and rhythm all matter. While watching, I paused the videos often. I would listen carefully to a sentence, then pause and try to repeat exactly what I heard. I copied the voice as closely as possible, trying to match the sounds, the speed, and the way the speakers moved their mouths. Sometimes, I watched the same sentence several times until I felt I could say it just like the speaker. This repetition was tiring but rewarding. It helped me improve my pronunciation a lot. Repeating sentences aloud was different from reading or writing English. It trained my mouth and tongue to make new sounds that didn't exist in my native language. For example, sounds like "the" in "thank you" or "this" were tricky at first. By watching the mouth movements in videos, I could see how the speakers placed their tongues and lips. Then, I tried to copy those movements. This visual learning made a huge difference. I also learned how native speakers connect words in a sentence. English doesn't always sound like separate words put together. Sometimes words blend or run into each other. For example, instead of "what are you doing?" the sentence often sounds like "what you doin'?" Hearing these natural forms in videos helped me understand real spoken English better. When I repeated these sentences, I felt like I was practicing real-life conversations, not just textbook language. Sometimes, I watched interviews. People in interviews speak more naturally, with different speeds and accents. Listening to interviews helped me get used to varied ways of speaking English. I could hear how people ask questions, give answers, and express opinions. I repeated sentences from the interviews just like in cartoons, copying their voice and intonation. This practice made me feel more confident that I could talk to different kinds of people in English. Short movies and clips were also helpful. They showed everyday situations like going to the store, ordering food, or meeting friends. These videos gave me useful phrases and expressions that I could use in real life. For example, I learned how to say, "Can I help you?" or "I'd like a coffee, please." I repeated these lines many times until they became easy to say. It felt great to know useful sentences I could use outside my room. Watching and repeating was also a way to practice listening. Before, I sometimes struggled to understand spoken English because it was too fast or unclear. But with videos, I could pause, rewind, and listen again. This slowed down the process and made it easier to catch every word. Over time, my listening skills improved, and I started understanding faster speech without needing to pause so often. Another benefit was learning the emotions behind the words. Videos show how people use their faces, hands, and voices to express feelings. I learned how to say things with excitement, sadness, anger or surprise. Copying these emotions when I repeated sentences made my English sound more natural. It was like acting in a play. This made speaking English more fun and less boring. I kept a notebook where I wrote down new words and phrases from the videos. After watching, I practiced those words again by repeating the sentences I wrote. This extra step helped me remember vocabulary better. Sometimes I even made my own short dialogues using the phrases I learned. Practicing these dialogues out loud made me feel ready for real conversations. I made sure to watch videos that matched my level. Too easy, and I didn't learn much new. Too hard, and I got frustrated and stopped watching. Finding the right videos was important. I searched for channels and programs designed for English learners. These often had subtitles, slower speech, and clear pronunciation. Subtitles helped me connect the written word with the spoken one, which was very useful. One day, I realized that watching and repeating wasn't just practice. It became a kind of language game. I challenged myself to mimic the speakers perfectly, like copying a song. Sometimes I recorded my voice and compared it with the video. This showed me how close I was to sounding natural. I tried to improve little by little each day. This method also made me more motivated. When I saw myself improving, it pushed me to keep going. It was exciting to watch a new video and understand most of it. Repeating sentences gave me a sense of achievement. I wasn't just learning English, I was joining a world of speakers. Eventually, I started to enjoy the culture behind the language too. Videos showed me parts of daily life in English-speaking countries. I learned about holidays, food, traditions, and humor. This made my learning deeper and more interesting. I felt connected to English beyond just words and grammar. Watching and repeating also prepared me for real conversations. When I finally spoke with native speakers, I recognized phrases I had practiced. This made talking less scary. I could respond faster because I had heard those sentences many times before. It was like knowing the script of a play before acting in it. I kept this habit of watching and repeating for months. It became a daily part of my learning. Sometimes I watched in the morning, sometimes before bed. This flexible routine kept my English practice consistent and enjoyable. Looking back, I believe watching videos and repeating sentences was one of the best ways to improve my speaking and listening. It made learning practical, fun, and effective. If you want to speak English better, I recommend this method very much. After gaining confidence with this practice, I wanted to take my speaking even further. I decided to find ways to speak with real people. This led me to join an English conversation club, where I could practice live conversations and make new friends. When I first started learning English, I thought that reading silently was enough. After all, I could understand the words and the meaning in my head, so I believed that silent reading would make me better. I would take small storybooks, or even articles online and read the words carefully, trying to understand each sentence. Sometimes I had to stop and look up words I didn't know. Sometimes the grammar seemed confusing, and I didn't know how to put the sentence together in my mind. But slowly, I was getting better at reading. I could understand more than before, and my vocabulary was growing. However, something was missing. I realized that even though I could understand English in my head, I couldn't speak it well. When I tried to say simple sentences, I would hesitate or forget the words. My tongue felt heavy, and I didn't know how to say the words correctly. I was afraid of making mistakes or sounding strange to others. This fear made me nervous, and sometimes I just gave up trying to speak. It felt like my silent reading was not helping me with speaking English. One day, I heard someone say, "Reading out loud is the best way to improve your speaking skills." I was curious. How could reading out loud be so powerful? So I decided to try it. At first, I chose very easy stories, with simple words and short sentences. I sat down with a book, opened it, and read the first sentence out loud. My voice was soft and shaky. I read slowly, making sure to pronounce each word clearly. Sometimes I didn't know the pronunciation, so I would pause and check with an online dictionary that has sound. I listened carefully, then repeated the word several times until I felt confident. Reading out loud felt strange in the beginning. I was talking to myself, and sometimes the neighbors could hear me. But I didn't care. I reminded myself that practice is important. I read the same story or article several times until I could read it smoothly. Every day, I spent at least 15 to 30 minutes reading out loud. I read children's stories, simple news articles, dialogues from English learning websites, and sometimes, even poetry. I learned how to pause between sentences, how to stress the right words, and how to sound natural. One surprising thing I noticed was that reading out loud made my voice stronger and clearer. Before, I would mumble or speak too softly. But with daily reading practice, I could hear my own voice becoming louder and more confident. My tongue and mouth muscles became stronger. I started to understand the rhythm and melody of English sentences. I learned how to connect words so that they don't sound separate or broken, but flow smoothly like a conversation. This was something I had never felt before with silent reading. Also, reading aloud helped me learn many new words that I would forget if I only read silently. When I said a new word out loud multiple times, it stuck in my memory better. I learned how to say difficult sounds like the th in think or the r in read. At first, these sounds were hard for me, but reading aloud helped me practice and improve. I also learned how to pronounce words differently depending on the context. For example, I learned that read can sound like read or read, depending on the tense, and hearing myself say these helped me remember. Another benefit was that reading out loud improved my listening skills. When I read, I listened carefully to the sound of the words and sentences. I paid attention to how English speakers put emphasis on certain words, how their voices go up or down at the end of questions or statements, and how they use pauses to make their meaning clear. This listening helped me understand spoken English better when I heard it in real life or on videos. Over time, my confidence grew. I started to feel proud when I could finish reading a whole story without stopping or looking at the dictionary. I recorded myself sometimes and listened to the recordings. This helped me find mistakes I wasn't aware of, such as missing sounds or wrong pronunciation. It was a little scary to hear my own voice at first, but I realized it was an important step to improve. I could compare my recordings and see my progress after a few weeks. Reading out loud also made me curious about English culture. I read stories from different countries, poems, fables, and even simple news about daily life in English-speaking countries. This helped me understand not just the language, but also the people and their habits. I felt connected to the world, outside my small village. This motivation made me want to keep practicing and learning more. Sometimes, I read with different emotions. If the story was happy, I smiled and read cheerfully. If it was sad, I lowered my voice. This made my reading more lively and helped me prepare for real conversations where emotions matter. I noticed that English is not just about words, it's about expressing feelings too. Reading out loud was like acting, and this made learning fun. My family noticed the change too. They said, "Lucy, your English sounds much better." My friends began asking me questions and I was able to answer more easily. I still made mistakes, but I was less afraid. Reading out loud gave me the practice I needed to speak confidently. It was my bridge from silent reading to real speaking. At times, I faced challenges. Some days I felt tired or lazy. Sometimes I wanted to skip reading, but I reminded myself of my goal to speak English well. I set small rewards, like a cup of my favorite tea after reading. I also kept a notebook where I wrote down new words and phrases I learned while reading. This helped me track my progress and kept me motivated. Sometimes I read with my little brother or sister, I taught them simple words and helped them read too. This made practicing English even more enjoyable because we supported each other. We would sometimes read dialogues and pretend to have conversations. This small family activity made learning English a happy part of our day. When I reached a level where I could read stories and news easily, I started exploring other types of reading. I tried reading instructions on my phone, recipes, and even simple manuals. This helped me learn practical English for everyday life. It was exciting to understand new things and to try new activities because I could read English instructions on my own. Through daily reading aloud, I realized that consistency is more important than speed. It didn't matter if I read slowly or made mistakes. What mattered was that I kept practicing every day. Even on busy days, I found a few minutes to read aloud. Slowly, reading out loud became a habit, a natural part of my routine that I looked forward to. This practice didn't just improve my English. It also helped me develop patience and discipline. I learned to accept mistakes as part of the process. Each word I struggled with was a step closer to fluency. I began to see learning English as a journey, not a race. This mindset gave me peace and joy in learning. Now, when I look back, I am amazed by how much I improved simply by reading out loud every day. It gave me the confidence to speak English in front of others, to answer questions, and to express myself clearly. It opened doors to new opportunities, new friends, and new experiences. The next step in my journey was to listen to my own voice carefully, to find and fix mistakes I didn't notice before. I started recording myself and paying attention to how I sounded. This was the beginning of a new practice that helped me improve even faster. One day, I decided to try something new in my English practice. Until then, I had mostly been talking to myself quietly or reading out loud. But I wanted to hear how I actually sounded when I spoke English. So I took my phone and hit the record button. I picked a short story, a simple one with easy words, and started reading it aloud. At first, I felt nervous. It was strange to hear my own voice coming back at me from the phone. The voice sounded different from how I thought it did in my head. It was a little shaky, and I could hear my mistakes clearly. I said some words wrong, stumbled over others, and sometimes I spoke too fast or too slow. I even noticed my accent, which was thick in some places and nearly invisible in others. Listening to my own voice was not easy. It felt uncomfortable, and sometimes a little embarrassing. But deep down, I knew this was something I needed to do if I really wanted to improve. As I listened carefully, I realized how important it was to hear my mistakes, not just know them in theory. When I practiced by myself, I sometimes thought I was saying words correctly, but hearing the recording showed me the truth. For example, I noticed that I often mixed up the pronunciation of the sounds. I said think more like tink, and this more like dis. I also realized that my stress on words was sometimes wrong. I put too much emphasis on the wrong syllable, which made my sentences sound unnatural. Even the rhythm of my speech was uneven. Some parts I spoke too quickly, like I was in a hurry, and other parts I dragged out slowly. This made me sound nervous and unsure instead of calm and confident. Hearing all these things in my own voice was hard. I wanted to ignore them or pretend they didn't exist. But I reminded myself that this was a step forward, not backward. This was a way to find out what I needed to work on next. Every mistake was a clue. Each strange sound was a hint about what I should practice more. Slowly, I started to look forward to these recording sessions, even though they were sometimes uncomfortable. It became a kind of game. Could I say the sentence better the next time? Could I fix the mistakes I heard? Could I make my voice sound clearer, smoother, and more natural? I also noticed that I became more aware of how I moved my mouth when I spoke. Before, I just said words without thinking about how my tongue, lips, and teeth worked together. But now, Listening to the recordings made me realize that good pronunciation was about the right movements. So I started watching videos about how to pronounce difficult English sounds. I practiced in front of the mirror, trying to copy how native speakers moved their mouths. I repeated words like think, thought, that, and those many times, recording myself each time to see if I improved. Sometimes I did better, and sometimes I did worse. But I kept trying, because every little improvement felt like a victory. Over time, this process helped me in many ways. First, it built my confidence. At first, I felt shy and embarrassed to hear my own voice because it didn't sound like a native speaker's. But after weeks and months of practice, my voice became clearer and more understandable. I realized that my English was not perfect, but it was improving. I could hear progress, and that motivated me to keep going. Second, it helped me develop a better ear for English sounds. I became more sensitive to how words should sound, which made listening to others easier too. I could tell when someone was speaking clearly or when they were mumbling. I also started noticing the different accents of English speakers on videos and TV shows. This made me more comfortable with the fact that there is no single perfect English accent. Everyone speaks a little differently, and that's okay. Recording myself also helped me practice other important skills. For example, I worked on my intonation, the rise and fall of my voice during sentences. English is a musical language in some ways, and speaking with a flat, dull voice makes it hard to understand and boring to listen to. By listening to my recordings, I could compare my voice to native speakers and try to copy their lively and natural intonation patterns. I learned when to raise my voice at the end of a question or lower it at the end of a statement. I practiced, pausing at the right moments, so my sentences sounded smooth and clear instead of rushed or choppy. All of these details made a big difference in how well I could communicate. At one point, I also used recordings to prepare for real conversations. When I knew I would meet someone who spoke English, I recorded myself practicing the questions I might be asked and the answers I wanted to give. For example, I recorded greetings like, "Hello, how are you?" and replies like, "I'm fine, thank you. How about you?" I did this over and over until I felt comfortable saying these lines aloud without hesitation. This helped me reduce my fear of speaking to real people. When the moment came, I was more ready. I wasn't perfect, but I was prepared. And that made a big difference. Recording my voice was also a way to measure my progress. I saved my first recordings in a folder and compared them to new ones every few weeks. The difference was amazing. My pronunciation was clearer, my sentences were smoother, and my confidence had grown. It was like watching a flower bloom. Slow, but steady. This gave me hope and kept me motivated on days when I felt tired or frustrated. I reminded myself that learning English is a journey, not a race. Each recording was a step forward. However, the process was not without challenges. Sometimes I felt discouraged when I listened to my voice and heard so many mistakes. It felt like I wasn't improving fast enough. Sometimes I thought, maybe I'll never sound like a native speaker. But each time I told myself to be patient and kind. I remembered that even native speakers make mistakes, and learning a new language is hard for everyone. What mattered was that I didn't give up. I kept recording, listening, and practicing. Another challenge was making time for these recordings. At first, I was excited and did it every day. But some days I was busy or tired, and I skipped it. Then I noticed my English practice became weaker. So I made a rule for myself. No matter what, I would record at least once a week. This small commitment helped me stay consistent. I learned that regular practice, even for a short time, is better than long practice once in a while. Gradually, recording my voice became a part of my English routine. It was no longer scary or uncomfortable. Instead, it was fun and rewarding. I even started sharing some of my recordings with close friends who were also learning English. We gave each other feedback and encouragement, Sometimes we laughed together at our funny mistakes, which made the learning process more enjoyable and less stressful. One of the biggest lessons I learned from recording myself was to be patient and gentle with my progress. I stopped expecting perfection overnight. Instead, I celebrated small wins, like pronouncing a difficult word correctly or speaking a sentence without stopping. I learned to listen to my voice not to criticize, but to guide myself toward improvement. This shift in attitude made learning English more positive and less frightening. Finally, after months of recording and practicing, I noticed a big change in how I spoke English. I was no longer afraid to speak to strangers or join English conversations. My words came out more naturally and confidently. I could understand more when people spoke to me, and I could respond without long pauses. This was a huge achievement for me, especially because I had started alone, without a teacher or classroom. Recording my voice and listening to it was one of the most powerful tools I used in this journey. With this new confidence, I decided to add another practice to my routine, which helped me even more. I began to use everyday objects around my house to learn vocabulary and practice sentences. I labeled things in my room with their English names and spoke about them often. This step was fun and creative, and it made English a real part of my daily life. I started saying things like, I open the door, I turn off the lamp, and I put my pillow on the bed. This helped me remember words better and build longer sentences. It also gave me new topics to talk about in my recordings. Every night, I made it a habit to write a little diary in English. At first, it was just a few simple sentences, maybe 3 or 5 lines about my day. For example, I would write, "Today, I watched a video about animals. I learned many new words." Writing those small sentences made me think carefully about what I had done during the day, what I had seen, and what I had learned. It wasn't always easy to find the right words. Sometimes I had to look up new words in a dictionary or ask my phone to translate. But each time I wrote something, I felt a little stronger in English. Writing helped me organize my thoughts. It forced me to slow down and think about how to say things in English. If I only spoke without writing, my words could get jumbled or confusing, but writing made me focus on clear, correct sentences. I also found that writing in English helped me remember new vocabulary better. When I wrote a word, I saw it on paper and repeated it in my mind. Then, when I read the diary, out loud, I heard the word again with my own voice. This repeated seeing and saying helped the words stick in my memory. Reading my diary aloud became an important step. Speaking the words I had written made me more comfortable using English sounds. At first, reading aloud felt strange because my mouth was not used to some sounds. Sometimes I stumbled on difficult words or phrases, but I didn't stop. Instead, I repeated those parts until they sounded right. Reading aloud also helped me practice pronunciation, rhythm, and speed. When I read quietly, I did not pay attention to how I said the words, but reading out loud made me focus on every syllable and sentence. It was like music. Some words sounded smooth and easy, others felt rough and needed more work. Over time, I noticed that my voice became clearer and my speaking faster. Another important thing about writing and reading my diary was that it gave me a way to see my progress. When I read old diary entries, I could compare them with new ones. I saw how my sentences got longer, how I used new words, and how I made fewer mistakes. This made me feel proud and motivated to continue learning. Writing my diary was not only about English, it was also a way to express my feelings and experiences. Some days were happy, and I wrote about fun things I did. Other days were hard, and I wrote about my worries. Putting those feelings into English helped me understand myself better and made English more personal and real for me. It became a small friend I spoke with every night. Even when I felt tired or unmotivated, I still wrote in my diary. That small daily habit became a bridge between me and the English language. It kept me connected and moving forward. Slowly, but Surely, writing and reading aloud became easier and more natural. The words came to me faster, and I was less afraid to speak them. This practice helped me build a strong foundation for my speaking skills. One evening, after reading my diary, aloud as usual, I looked in the mirror and realized I was speaking English clearly and confidently. That moment made me smile. I knew my hard work was paying off. From that point, I wanted to take my practice even further. So, I started to look at myself in the mirror not just to read but to actually have conversations, as if I had a partner right there with me. This new step helped me prepare for real-life talks, where I had to answer questions and keep the conversation going. It was fun and challenging at the same time. My reflection became my practice partner and my teacher. This is how I moved from writing and reading alone to practicing speaking in front of myself, ready for real people. Sometimes, when I felt shy or lonely, I found a very special friend who was always there for me, my own reflection in the mirror. At first, it felt a little strange and funny to talk to myself like that. I mean, who talks to their own reflection, right? But I realized something important. When I practiced speaking English with my reflection, I could try new words without feeling afraid of being judged. No one was listening except me. This made me feel safe, and that safety helped me grow. Every evening, after finishing my homework or after dinner, I would stand in front of the mirror in my bedroom. The mirror was big and clear, and I could see my whole face and even some of my shoulders. Looking into my own eyes was like looking at a friend who understood me. I started simple. I said, "Hello, how are you today?" in English, just as if I was greeting a new friend. I waited for an answer and then answered myself. "I am fine, thank you. How about you?" I smiled at the mirror and waited for the reflection to smile back. This small exercise felt powerful. It made me feel connected and less alone. Sometimes, I made funny faces. I would pretend to be surprised or excited, or even confused. "Oh no, what happened today?" I asked my reflection, moving my hands as if I was really telling a story to a friend. Then, I answered in English, telling myself about my day. "I cooked lunch today. It was pasta. I watched my favorite TV show after that." The more I spoke, the more confident I felt. I practiced my pronunciation carefully, trying to sound clear and smooth. I noticed how my mouth moved when I said certain words, and I worked on making the sounds better. I also used hand gestures while talking. This helped me express my feelings and thoughts more naturally. For example, when I said, "I am very happy today," I smiled brightly and put my hands over my heart. When I said, "I was a little tired," I yawned and rubbed my eyes. These small actions made the practice feel real, like a real conversation between two friends. It was fun and playful, and I never got bored. There were times when I laughed out loud at myself. Sometimes I mixed up words or forgot how to say something. For example, I once said "I eated lunch" instead of "I ate lunch," and I laughed because it sounded so silly. But then, I corrected myself and said the right sentence. I learned that making mistakes was okay. In fact, it was part of learning. Talking to my reflection allowed me to make those mistakes freely, without feeling embarrassed. I was my own teacher, and I was patient with myself. Slowly, this habit of practicing in front of the mirror became a daily routine. It was my special time, just for me and my English. When no one else was around, I felt free to practice any way I wanted. I tried new words, practiced long sentences, and told stories about my life. Sometimes I made up little stories about a trip I wanted to take or a dream I had. I spoke as if my reflection was listening closely and responding with understanding and kindness. As I practiced more and more, I noticed changes in myself. I felt less nervous about speaking English outside my home. When I spoke with friends or strangers, I remembered my practice sessions and felt stronger. My voice sounded clearer, and I spoke more smoothly. Even when I wasn't sure about a word, I didn't stop talking. I knew I could try again later. The mirror practice gave me courage. One day, I realized that the reflection wasn't just an image. It had become my practice partner, my first English-speaking friend. This friend was always patient, always encouraging, and never tired of hearing me speak. This was amazing because before, I thought I needed others to practice. Now, I knew I could start with myself. This was a huge step in my English journey. Sometimes, when I felt sad or stressed, I talked to my reflection about those feelings. I said things like, "I am nervous about speaking tomorrow," or "I want to speak better." Talking aloud helped me understand my own feelings better. It gave me a chance to calm down and prepare my mind for the next day. It was like my reflection helped me practice not just English, but also how to be brave. This habit also improved my listening skills. When I spoke slowly and clearly, I listened carefully to how I sounded. If I heard a word that didn't sound right, I tried again. I practiced difficult sounds like the and are. Sometimes, I sang English songs in front of the mirror, too. Singing helped me with rhythm and pronunciation, and it made the practice enjoyable. With time, I even started imagining that my reflection was a real person. I asked questions and gave answers. "What is your favorite color?" I asked. "My favorite color is blue," I answered. I pretended we were having a long conversation about movies, food, and hobbies. This made me feel ready for real conversations with real people. One of the best things about practicing with my reflection was that it was always available. I didn't need an appointment or someone else's time. I could practice any time I wanted, morning, afternoon, or night. This freedom helped me practice regularly, and regular practice made my English stronger. As my confidence grew, I began to smile more when I spoke. I saw that speaking English was not just about words, but also about expressing who I was. My reflection helped me discover my own voice. It showed me that English was a tool to share my stories, feelings, and dreams with the world. Some days during my English learning journey were really hard. I remember feeling slow when I spoke, like my words were stuck in my mouth. Sometimes I could not find the right word, or I forgot how to say something simple. There were moments when I wanted to give up because it felt like no progress was happening at all. I made so many mistakes. Sometimes I mixed words, or my sentences didn't sound right, or my pronunciation was far from perfect. It was frustrating and sometimes very discouraging. But even in those difficult moments, I kept telling myself, a very important thing, fluency does not happen overnight. It takes time, patience, and a lot of practice. I reminded myself that every great English speaker started where I was, making mistakes, speaking slowly, and learning one word at a time. I believed that if I kept going, little by little, I would improve. I told myself, "Lucy, your voice matters. It may sound strange or different now, but one day, it will sound clear and strong." I knew it was important to keep my voice alive, to use it every day, no matter how small or simple the words were. I realized that speaking English was not about being perfect. It was about connecting with others and sharing my ideas, no matter how basic they were. Even if no one else was listening at the moment, I was practicing for the future, for the times when I would have real conversations with real people. That thought gave me hope. It made me believe that my efforts were not wasted, and my voice had value. Every day, I imagined how my voice would sound after months of practice. I dreamed about speaking confidently at school, work, or with friends. I pictured myself answering questions in English without hesitation. I imagined traveling and chatting with people from other countries. This vision became my motivation. I reminded myself that every word I spoke was a step closer to that dream. Even if my sentences were short or imperfect now, they were building. the foundation of a future where I could express myself fully in English. There were times when I felt lonely in my practice. I practiced alone in my room, talking to my reflection or repeating sentences from videos. Sometimes I wished I had someone to correct me or give me advice. But then I realized that being alone also made me stronger. It taught me discipline, courage, and self-reliance. I learned to listen carefully to my own voice, to notice where I made mistakes, and to try again. This self-awareness helped me improve faster than I expected. I was my own teacher, and that was a powerful feeling. Also understood that mistakes were not failures. They were part of learning. Each mistake showed me what I needed to work on next. Instead of feeling ashamed, I started to smile at my errors and say, "Thank you, mistake, for teaching me." This change in mindset made practicing English more fun and less stressful. I stopped fearing mistakes and started welcoming them as helpful friends on my journey. This belief made a big difference because it allowed me to speak more freely and confidently. Another thing I did was celebrate small wins. If I learned a new word, I was proud. If I spoke a sentence correctly, I felt happy. If I understood a video without subtitles, I celebrated inside. These small moments of success gave me energy to continue. I realized that learning a language is like climbing a mountain. You may not see the top right away, but every step forward brings you closer. Focusing on the small steps kept me motivated. Slowly, my English voice grew stronger. I noticed that my pronunciation improved. I could speak longer sentences without stopping. I understood more when people talked to me. My confidence grew and I felt proud of my progress. People around me began to notice too. Friends and family started asking me, "How did you get better?" I smiled and said, "I just kept speaking every day." That was my secret. Consistent practice and believing that my voice matters. I want you to know that your voice matters too. Whether you are just starting or struggling like I was, your efforts are important. You don't need a perfect teacher or perfect conditions. You need the courage to speak, the patience to keep practicing, and the belief that your voice will be heard one day. When you speak English, you are not only learning a language, you are building connections, opening opportunities, and growing as a person. Your voice is your key to the world. So, even if you feel slow, shy, or unsure, remember that every word you say is a victory. Keep speaking. Keep practicing. Your voice is unique and powerful. It deserves to be heard, and the more you use it, the stronger it will become. I believe in you because I have been where you are now. Your journey is important, and your voice will carry you far. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it inspires you to keep going, even on the hardest days. Remember, you are never alone in this. We are all learning together, and every voice counts. If my journey touched your heart or gave you new ideas to practice speaking English alone, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. And remember, you are never truly alone when you speak English. Your voice connects you to the world. See you in the next story.